Rome did not fall in a single night, it bled, slowly. And from that blood, a new nation was born. When Rome died, France was not yet a country. It was an idea, unfinished, unnamed, and violent. This is not the story of emperors in marble palaces. This is the story of collapse, chaos, and rebirth. To understand the birth of France, we must first watch Rome disappear. In the 4th century, Rome still called itself eternal. Its roads stretched across Europe. Its laws ruled millions. Its legions still marched beneath eagle banners. But the empire was rotting from the inside. The western provinces were starving. The army was underpaid. Corruption hollowed out power. And Rome, once a conqueror, now begged outsiders for protection. Those outsiders had names Rome feared. Franks, not Goths, Vandals. Rome called them barbarians. History would call them founders. Gaul, modern-day France, was Rome's prized province. Rich soil, strategic rivers, thriving cities like Lutetia, Lugdunum, and Arelate. For 4 centuries, Gaul was Roman. Latin replaced local languages. Roman law ruled daily life. Baths, roads, theaters. Gaul looked Roman, sounded Roman, was Roman. But loyalty to Rome was breaking. When legions stopped arriving, when taxes kept rising, when emperors changed every year, Gaul began to look elsewhere for survival. In the year 406 AD, the unthinkable happened. The Rhine River froze. That river was Rome's northern wall, its natural border, its shield. And when it froze solid, entire nations crossed it. Vandals, Suebi, Alans. They did not knock, they invaded. Roman defenses collapsed in weeks. Cities burned, countryside emptied. Authority vanished. Rome had lost Gaul, but it didn't know it yet. Then came the Franks. Unlike other invaders, the Franks didn't destroy everything. They stayed, they fought, they settled, they ruled. At first they served Rome as allies and mercenaries. Rome needed their swords, the Franks needed land. It was a deal made in desperation, and it changed history forever. By the late 5th century, Rome was a shadow. In 476 AD, the last Western Roman emperor was deposed. No armies marched to save him. No cities rose in protest. The Western Roman Empire was dead. But Gaul did not fall into darkness. Something else rose in its place. A young Frankish king named Clovis stood at the center of this transformation. He was brutal, he was ambitious, and he was patient. Clovis defeated rival Frankish kings one by one. He crushed Roman generals who still claimed authority. He united northern Gaul under his rule. But Clovis understood something vital. Power alone was not enough. He needed legitimacy. Rome had fallen, but Roman culture had not. The people of Gaul were still Roman in language, law, and faith. They were Christian. They respected Roman administration. They remembered the empire. So Clovis made a choice that changed Europe. He converted to Christianity, not Arian Christianity like other Germanic kings, but Roman Catholic Christianity. With one baptism, Clovis did what armies could not. He won the loyalty of the Gallo-Roman population. He gained the support of the church. He became the rightful ruler of former Roman land. This was the moment France began, not with a flag, not with borders, but with fusion. Roman law merged with Frankish tradition. Latin slowly evolved into early French. Roman cities became Frankish capitals. The church replaced imperial authority. Rome was gone. But it lived on inside a new kingdom. By the year 500, Gaul was no longer Roman. It was Frankish, and the Franks would give the land a name, Francia, the land of the Franks. France was born not from conquest alone, but from the ruins of an empire. And this was only the beginning, because what Clovis started, his descendants would transform through blood, betrayal, and crowns. From Rome's ashes, a medieval powerhouse would rise. Rome was dead, but its ghost still ruled Gaul. Clovis may have worn a crown, but he ruled over a land that still thought in Roman terms. Cities still followed Roman law. Bishops still replaced governors. Latin still echoed in courts and churches. The empire had fallen, its system had not, and that system would shape France for centuries. When Clovis died in 511 AD, his kingdom did not pass to one heir. It was split again, and again, and again. Frankish tradition demanded that land be divided among sons. Unity was temporary, civil war was constant. Brothers fought brothers, uncles killed nephews. Kingdoms shattered, reunited, and shattered again. Yet through all this chaos, one truth remained. The Franks were now the rulers of former Roman Gaul. This era produced a new ruling dynasty, the Merovingians. History would remember them as the long-haired kings. Sacred hair believed to hold royal power, but behind the myth was decay. As generations passed, Merovingian kings grew weaker. Real power slipped away, not to emperors, not to Rome, but to men who never wore crowns. They were called mayors of the palace, originally royal servants, administrators, managers of estates. Over time, they became generals, judges, kingmakers. By the 7th century, Merovingian kings were kings in name only. History would give them a cruel title, the Do-Nothing Kings. One family rose above all others. The Pippinids. They controlled armies. They collected taxes. They negotiated with the church. And among them stood a man who would reshape Europe without ever calling himself king. Charles Martel. In 732 AD, Europe stood on the edge of transformation. Islamic armies, fresh from conquering North Africa and Spain, pushed north. Their momentum seemed unstoppable. They crossed the Pyrenees. They entered Frankish land. At a place called Tours, Charles Martel met them. The battle was brutal, cold, relentless. And when it ended, the Frankish army stood victorious. This battle did not save Europe overnight, but it changed perception. The Franks were no longer just heirs of Rome. They were defenders of Christendom. Martel never became king, but his legacy was unstoppable. His son, Pippin the Short, understood what his father had built. The king had no power, the mayor had everything. So Pippin asked a dangerous question: why rule in the shadows? In 751 AD, the Pope made a historic decision. He removed the Merovingian king and crowned Pippin as king of the Franks. For the first time since Rome fell, a ruler in Gaul was crowned not by blood, but by the church. This moment changed everything. Kingship became sacred, authority became divine, and France became inseparable from Christianity. Pippin's son would take this alliance to heights unseen since the Caesars. His name was Charlemagne. Charlemagne did not inherit a kingdom. He built an empire. He conquered Saxons. He crushed Lombards. He ruled lands from the Atlantic to the Danube. And in the year 800 AD, in the city of Rome itself, the impossible happened. The Pope crowned Charlemagne, Emperor of the Romans. Rome was dead, yet crowned again. But this was not ancient Rome reborn. This was something new, a Christian empire, a Frankish empire, a medieval empire. Charlemagne ruled in Latin, used Roman law, built schools, reformed writing. The past and future collided in one man. Yet even empires built on genius cannot escape human weakness. When Charlemagne died, his empire did not endure, it fractured. And in that fracture, France began to emerge clearly for the first time. In 843 AD, the Treaty of Verdun split the empire into 3 parts: West Francia, Middle Francia, East Francia. West Francia would evolve, slowly, painfully, into France. The Roman dream was finally gone. In its place stood a kingdom shaped by collapse, faith, and war. And in Part 3, we will see how West Francia transforms, from a fractured land of lords into a true French kingdom. West Francia was born on paper. France would be born in blood. After the Treaty of Verdun, the land that would become France was fragile, a kingdom in name, not in reality. Kings ruled from parchment. Real power lived in castles. The descendants of Charlemagne were weak. They inherited titles, not authority. Counts, dukes, and lords ruled their own territories like mini-kings. They built fortresses, they raised private armies. They ignored royal commands. The king of West Francia could not even protect his own roads. And then came a new terror. From the north, longships appeared on the rivers. The Vikings, they burned cities. They looted monasteries. They sailed straight to Paris. Rome's old walls could not stop them. Frankish armies failed again and again. Kings paid them to leave. This humiliation shattered royal prestige. But one Viking did something unexpected. In 911 AD, a warrior named Rollo accepted land instead of silver. He was granted territory along the Seine. This land became Normandy. The deal was simple: protect the kingdom, defend the rivers, accept Christianity. The Vikings settled, and in doing so, they became French. By the 10th century, West Francia was changing. Latin was no longer spoken by the people. It evolved into early French. Roman identity faded. Local identity grew. This land was no longer Roman, no longer Frankish. It was becoming something else. In 987 AD, a turning point arrived. The Carolingian dynasty ended. The crown passed not to an emperor but to a local lord, Hugh Capet. His kingdom was small, his power limited, his rivals strong, but his bloodline would rule France for over 800 years. The Capetians ruled differently. They did not chase empire, they focused on survival. They allied with the church. They secured Paris as a sacred capital. They passed the crown from father to son, without division. Slow stability replaced chaos. Slowly, the idea of France strengthened. The king was no longer just a lord. He was the king. Law began to centralize. Royal courts expanded. Royal symbols gained meaning. France was not united, but it was forming. Then came a shock from across the Channel. In 1066, the Duke of Normandy invaded England. William the Conqueror, he was a French vassal, but now he ruled England. This created a dangerous paradox. French kings ruled less land than their own vassals. England and France became permanently entangled. Wars followed marriages, betrayals, and yet every conflict strengthened French identity. Enemies clarified borders. War defined loyalty. France was learning who it was by fighting who it was not. Ubayun. By the 12th century, France was no longer a successor of Rome. It was a kingdom with its own language, its own culture, its own destiny. Rome had died centuries ago, but its fall had given birth to something new. France did not become a nation in peace. It was born screaming, on battlefields soaked in blood. By the 14th century, France existed on maps. But in the hearts of its people, loyalty was still local, village before kingdom, lord before crown. Then came a war that would change everything. It began with a question no sword could answer. Who had the right to rule France? The French king died without a male heir. Across the Channel, the King of England claimed the throne through blood. What followed was not a single war, but a century of destruction. The 100 Years' War had begun. England struck fast. At Crécy and Poitiers, English armies shattered French knights, not with numbers but with longbows. Armored nobles fell to peasant archers. The old feudal order cracked. France was humiliated, its king captured, its treasury empty, its countryside burning. Then disaster became apocalypse. The Black Death arrived. 1/3 of France's population vanished. Fields went untended, cities emptied. Faith wavered. For many, it felt like the end of the world. Rome had fallen slowly. France seemed to be dying all at once. Thus, by the early 15th century, France was broken. English armies controlled the north. Paris was occupied. The French king was disinherited. France no longer seemed inevitable. It seemed finished. Then from the shadows a voice rose. She was a peasant illiterate. 17 years old, her name was Joan of Arc. Joan did not arrive with an army. She arrived with belief. She claimed God had spoken to her, that France was chosen, that the English would fall. In an age of despair, faith was a weapon. Against all logic, she was given command, and against all expectation she won. At Orléans, French forces broke the siege. Victories followed. Momentum shifted. For the first time in generations, France believed in itself. Joan was captured, betrayed, sold, burned alive as a heretic. But her death did not kill the idea she awakened. It ignited it. Slowly, relentlessly, France pushed back. New tactics replaced feudal chaos. Standing armies formed. Royal taxation expanded. The king became more than a symbol. He became the state. By 1453, the war ended. England was expelled from French soil, all but one city. France stood scarred, exhausted, but united. This war changed everything. French identity no longer depended on Rome, or the Franks, or the Church alone. It depended on shared suffering. Shared victory, shared land. Rome did not fall in vain. Its collapse did not erase civilization in the land that became France. It transformed it. By the end of the 100 Years' War, France stood changed forever. Not Roman, not Frankish, but unmistakably French. The medieval king was no longer just the first among nobles. He was the center of power. Royal law replaced local custom. Taxes funded permanent armies. Officials answered to the crown, not castles. The ghost of Rome returned one final time, not as empire, but as administration. The French monarchy absorbed lessons Rome once taught: centralized authority, written law, bureaucracy. But unlike Rome, France wrapped power in identity. Language unified the people. The king spoke French, not Latin. Paris became more than a city. It became the heart of the nation. The Renaissance accelerated everything. Ideas flowed from Italy. Art, science, philosophy reshaped thought. France looked forward, not backward. Roman ruins became inspiration, not chains. Religion, once the glue of unity, became a fracture. The Reformation split Europe. France bled through religious wars. Catholics against Protestants, neighbor against neighbor. The state nearly collapsed again. But once more France survived by adapting. The crown asserted supremacy over belief. Law rose above faith. When the Edict of Nantes was signed, tolerance, however fragile, became policy. The lesson was clear. Unity mattered more than ideology. By the 17th century, France dominated Europe. Its language became diplomacy. Its culture defined elegance. Its armies marched farther than Roman legions once had. The Sun King ruled from Versailles, not as Emperor of Rome, but as King of France. And yet the Roman story lingered. The idea of citizenship, the idea of law above men, the idea that power must serve order. These ideas did not die with Rome. They evolved. When revolution finally came, when crowns fell and kings were executed, France did not abandon Rome's legacy. It claimed its liberty. Law, republic. Concepts born in the ancient world, reforged in a modern nation. So when did Rome die? Rome died when its armies vanished. Rome died when emperors fell silent. But Rome lived on, in roads beneath French soil, in laws shaping French courts, in a nation born from its ruins. France was not built after Rome. France was built from Rome, from collapse, from chaos, from continuity. An empire fell, a nation rose, and the world was never the same.